Right, well, good evening. Welcome to part 9 of our online Juche Idea Study Course. We've been looking at the guiding principles of the Juche Idea, or if you like, the nuts and bolts of how Juche is applied in practice. In previous sessions, we looked at Juche in ideology, independence in politics, and self-sufficiency in economy. Now we turn to self-reliance in defence, which is very important and also at this moment very topical given the recent self-defensive missile tests of the DPRK. In order to ensure independence and prosperity of a country, it is necessary to strengthen military power as well as politics and the economy. The issue of military affairs is a very important one concerning the destiny of a country. Those countries that neglected military affairs were subjugated, so people regarded military affairs as the most important affairs among state affairs. What then is necessary for a country to defend itself? The principle of self-defense, self-reliance in defense, clarified by the Juche Idea, gives the correct answer to this question. Chairman Kim Jong-il said, implementing the principle of self-reliant defense means defending one's own country by one's own efforts, end of quotation. In other words, this means that the people in each country build powerful military power to defend the country by themselves and solve all theoretical and practical problems arising in the building of military powers and military activities in the interests of the people and according to the specific conditions of the country. The principle has three basic points. One is to make the building of military power and military activity serve the defending of the country. Second one is to make defending the country depending on the strength of the people and on their own military power. The third one is to solve all problems arising in the building of military power and military activities in the interest of the people according to specific conditions of the country. It is one of the important points in keeping this principle to make the building of military power and military activities serve the people and the defense of the country. This means to make the building of military power and military activity become means to defend one's sovereignty and the people's independent and creative life. It is a prior requirement in realizing independence in military fields to make the military affairs defend the security and interests of the country and its people. The people's demands and interests in the military field provide a military guarantee for the people to lead independent and creative lives as true masters of society, free from the subjugation of other countries. This demand and interests come from the independence and expression of their independence. It is possible to defend independence in the military field when the building of military power and military activities serve to defend the demand and interests of the people and defend the sovereignty of the country. The second point of the principle of self-reliance in defense is to make the defending of the country depend on the strength of its people and on their own military power. Like in all other affairs, the masters of military affairs are the party and the people in that country, and it is the people who build military power and defend the country. No other nation can replace the masters in defending the country. And I would add here the DPRK's own experience and the experience of other countries illustrates this point. During the anti-Japanese armed struggle, the anti-Japanese guerrillas requested that the USSR, the first workers and peasant state, supply a hand grenade to the guerrillas. However, no hand grenade factory was supplied, so the anti-Japanese guerrillas under the leadership of President Kim Il-sung created the Yonggil bomb. During the Fatherland Liberation War, the Korean People's Army had to retreat because fraternal countries were not able to supply enough weapons in the time required. Lastly, the experience of the Cuban Missile Crisis showed it was not a good idea for a small country to rely on a big country for its defense. The party and people in each country can get help from fraternal and friendly countries in defending the country from the imperialist invasion. Such support and cooperation are important in defending the independence and sovereignty from the imperialist invasion, but they play no more than an additional role, and the main one is the strength of one's own. When one's strength is prepared, external assistance can be useful. It is impossible to repudiate foreign invaders under the condition that each country's internal force and its own defending power are not prepared. However big the foreign assistance is, it's therefore important to build one's own strong military power to defend oneself, and on that basis solve all problems in military affairs, finding the defending power in the strength of one's own people. The third point of the principle is to solve all problems arising in the building of military affairs, military activities in the interests of the people and according to the specific conditions of the country. Each country has different political, economic and military potentials and different armed military equipment, geographical conditions and specific conditions. This being the situation, it is necessary to solve all problems arising in the building of military affairs and military activities by one's own decision and according to the specific situation. If not so, it is impossible to build strong military power and avoid twists and turns in the war for defending the country. In order to defend the country by oneself, it's necessary to solve all problems arising in the building of military affairs and military activities in the interest of the people according to the specific conditions of the country. To defend oneself by one's own strength is the principle and standpoint of self-reliance in defense. What then is necessary to maintain the principle of self-reliance in defense? That is, firstly, to ensure self-reliance in defense is the fundamental principle in building an independent state. As all the countries cannot win at the same time the revolution, those countries that won the revolution earlier should build a new society under the conditions in which the imperialists remain. Imperialism is the root cause of invasion and war. Between 1900 and 1930, there have been 24 between 1900 and 1938, there have been 24 wars. World War I, the invasion of Poland by Hitler and Germany, brought World War II. And in the last 60 years, there have been lots of wars. The root cause is imperialism, which has aggression and plunder as its bread and butter, basically. Even today, when the Cold War has supposedly ended, the imperialists resort to power politics and have created a second Cold War. In the year 2000, the amount of world military expenditure was $842 billion, of which $268 billion was the US share. Japan spent $30 billion, France 29 billion, Germany 23 billion. So basically the share of the Western imperialists was $610 billion. If the imperialists have no intention to make war, why do they keep increasing military spending? In fact, the figures I've just quoted are very old ones. They're probably double that today. We can see the US and Britain increasing military expenditure. They not only increase military expenditure, but also instigate their puppets to make war and directly interfere, with arms whenever they have a chance. This was well proved when the US provoked the Gulf War, the bombing of Yugoslavia, the invasion of Afghanistan, and other incidents. And of course, we see in Afghanistan where that all ended up. How is it possible to build an independent sovereign state without one's own powerful military power, as long as the imperialists, the root cause of war and aggression, continue to exist? To defend oneself is the nature of man. A country should have means to defend itself. It is impossible to be an independent sovereign state, people and territory from the imperialists' aggression. Herein lies an important reason why it is necessary to adhere to the principle of self-reliance in defense. This is also because the self-reliant defense is the military guarantee for political independence and economic self-sufficiency. Only with self-reliant military power is it possible to defend political independence. In the past, many countries were deprived of their sovereignty because they had no military power strong enough to defend themselves. This is also proved by the historical fact that the Korean people had to suffer from disasters and misfortunes by the foreign aggressors because they did not have military power to defend themselves. As a matter of fact, Korea was strong in the era of the Goguryeo dynasty. Goguryeo, which was known as the most powerful country in the East, had a 300,000 strong army. The army men and people were educated from the early days in patriotism and learned military arts and defeated hundreds of thousands of enemy invaders, displaying its high dignity. But the feudal rulers in the Rhee dynasty corrupted politics, regarding it as a peaceful period, thus considerably weakening overall state and military power. Lee Sung-gi, who became the first king of the Rhee dynasty after overthrowing the Goryeo dynasty with arms, feared a coup and resorted to the politics of stressing literary men and neglecting military men. Therefore, in the Rhee dynasty, state power was weakened, and at the end of the dynasty, the country was in a very poor status. With poor military power, the feudal rulers had to open the door to the imperialists, who invaded with a few guns aboard a ship. Due to the policy of stressing literary people and neglecting military people, the country became weaker and weaker, and at last in 1907, its army was tragically dissolved by force by the Japanese imperialists. So the Korean people lost their national army, and the royal palace was guarded by an aggressive Japanese army, eventually being deprived of the country. Like this, apart from self-defensive military power, political independence is inconceivable. Self-defensive military power is necessary for economic self-sufficiency too. The building of an independent national economy requires peaceful conditions which are guaranteed by military power. Peace cannot be maintained by begging. It can be only kept by the struggle against imperialism. It is useless to fight against imperialism only with empty talk. For instance, in order to provide peaceful conditions for economic construction, it is necessary to have more powerful self-defensive military power to destroy the imperialists' war moves. Peace is maintained only by the arms of justice. Thanks to the army-based politics created and implemented by Chairman Kim Jong-il in Korea, the people rose in the building of a powerful socialist country, learning after the revolutionary spirit of soldiers, fighting trades and work styles created by the People's Army, frustrating tricks of the imperialist allied forces. Practical fighting experience of the Korean people who defended the cause of Juche socialism, overcoming all trials, proves that the army-based politics that solves all problems on the principle giving priority to military affairs and pushes ahead the overall cause of socialism, regarding the People's Army as the pillar of the revolution, depending on it, is the main guarantee for the victorious advance of socialism against imperialist, provocative and aggressive moves. To adhere to the principle of self-reliance and defense is the correct way to defend dignity, sovereignty and revolutionary achievements under the conditions in which imperialism still exists and the aggressive moves of the imperialists become extremely vicious. Thank you for listening.